And today I'm going to share with you my testimony, my experience of how God has been leading me since I was born.
Just real quick, John Mark, I'm wondering, would
Yes.
you like to share your video or would you rather share just the image here?
Okay, so I am not in a place with good lighting. So,
Okay, no problem. Go ahead. Thank you.
okay. So I would like to share with you my testimony, my experience from when I was born to the present time. And I hope that you're going to be blessed. So, as you all know, my name is John Marco Cheng, and I come from Kenya and live in Kenya. So, I was born in the year 2000 on January 27th. I was born in a county next to Nairobi, which is Kenya's capital. It's called Kiambu County, and that is where I lived for the first 9 years since I was born. So I was born in an Adventist family. My father and my mother are all Adventist, and they really took a very keen interest in ensuring that our experience as children is the experience that they wanted us to have. So they used to take us to church every Sabbath. And even while we were going to school, we had a very unique experience. And because in our class, not so many learners were Adventists, so it was unique for us to miss school on Saturday because we were going to church. And it remained that way even when I was in high school. So my parents were really keen on ensuring that we live a very religious life. So because of that, we were very much involved in there are two clubs in church which deal with children ministry. That is the Adventurers Club and the Pathfinders Club. So I was part of these two clubs, and we used to sing a lot. We used to have Bible games. We used to march like the scouts do. We used to have a lot of marching and the drills and all those things, and going for camps, and also putting on the Pathfinder and Adventurers Club uniforms. So I was very much involved in these two clubs. So that was my early experience as a child. And I remember I was very much interested in knowing of prophecy and having Bible studies. So I used to like going to church and just listening to the sermons and Bible studies and prophecy. So when I was 14, that was when I was in my final class in primary school. So here in Kenya, we used to have the old system, which is 8-4-4 system, where you go to primary school for 8 years, then you go to high school for 4 years, then to university or college for another 4 years. So when I was 14 is when I was in my class 8. So we used to do a national exam, which will determine which high school you will go. So in my final year in primary school, that was at the beginning of 2014, I had developed an interest in watching Christian Bible movies. And I remember watching a movie about the life of Christ. And it was not just one, there were several of them. I watched them and I realized that they skipped a lot of things that happened in the life of Christ that are mentioned in the Bible. So I told myself as a young boy that when I grow up, I want to make a movie that has everything that happened in the life of Christ that has been mentioned in the Bible. And to do that, I had to read the Bible and know exactly what was happening in the life of Christ. So I started from Matthew all the way to John. So while I was studying, I was reading the Bible from Matthew to John. But when I got to John, there's a place where I could read and I could keep on going back to that verse because it really spoke volumes to me. And that is John chapter 3, verse 3, where Christ says that except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So I knew that that was God speaking to me, that I must be born again. So my intentions changed after studying the book of John. Now I no longer wanted to read with the intention of making a movie about the life of Christ, but I wanted to get closer to God. And I kept on reading the Bible, going to read the book of Daniel and Revelation. And it is also in the same year that I started reading the book Great Controversy. So actually, this is going to be the 10th year ever since I started reading this book, Great Controversy. And I remember the first version of this book that I read was in my mother tongue. So I read the first few chapters in my mother tongue. Then I decided to read it in Kiswahili. But finally, I decided to read it in English, and it has been that way for the past 10 years. So I developed a keen interest in reading Great Controversy. Not only that, I started reading The Desire of Ages, Acts of the Apostles, and also Steps to Christ. And interesting enough is that reading these books really occupied most of my time. And I was reading them more than I was studying my schoolwork. And it was something that really made my class teacher to be very concerned. But I don't remember getting concerned because I wanted to read more of God's word. But that does not mean that my performance in class dropped. Actually, I did very well in my final exam that year. And because of that, I wanted to study it more and more and more. So it is also in the same year that while studying all of these books, I started studying with a friend who was my classmate, who later on in 2019 introduced the truth about who God is. So he introduced it to me after I was done with high school. So, but we had started studying with him in 2014. So that was my experience in high school. And when after finishing my final exam, I joined high school in 2015. So my high school was an interesting one also because I went to a boys' boarding school. And in that school, we were allowed to worship from Friday evening to Saturday evening. And it is something that is very rare to find in most of the boarding schools here in Kenya. So I really thank God for that opportunity to worship from Friday evening to the end of the Sabbath. Now, when I was in high school in my 3rd and 4th years, I used to teach the baptismal class. So as I taught in the baptismal class, I taught how it is taught in Adventism today. That will be mainstream Adventism. So I believed and taught of a Trinity God. And I will say that I was a modalistic Trinitarian, one who believes that God has revealed himself in three forms. So he revealed himself as the Father in the Old Testament. Then he revealed himself also as the Son in the New Testament, and also as the Holy Spirit after the ascension. So that is what I used to believe. But it is something that I could just mix it up with any kind that could fit into the Trinity theology. So I realized that while I was studying, even when I was having discussions with students in school, I wanted to align my beliefs with what the church taught. In other words, I placed my trust in what said the church, and I studied my Bible in order to fit in with the view of the church. It could not cross my mind that the church could be wrong. So I was like a champion for the church. I wanted to make sure that what I believe is what the church teaches, because in my mind, I believe that the church is right, and that is why I'm part of the church. So any ideas that could make me question what the church teaches, I could not tolerate such kind of ideas. So I would say that I was narrow-minded, not open to any other suggestions other than what the church was saying. And I found it very easy for me to abide or continue in mainstream Adventism, because that is what made me comfortable in church, that provided that I'm in concert with what the church is teaching, then I'm well and good and I'm in the right place. So after completing my high school in 2018, we started talking again with my primary school friend who was studying the Bible with. But this time, he approached me with a very amazing question. And he asked me, "Do you believe in the Trinity?" So when he asked me that question, it was obvious that, it's obvious that I believe in the Trinity, because that is what the church teaches. And I did not even expect him to ask me such a question, because I assume that he knows very well what the church teaches. So I never knew why he asked that question, but later on I knew because of the discussions we had with him. So that is how we started having discussions with him about the Trinity doctrine. And that is when I realized that there has been an ongoing debate within the church about who God is. And he shared with me some materials, some of which I printed, some of which I lost them. But there was one book which I printed, which really helped me later on in studies about who God is. And that is a book by Richard Vaughan called Satan's All-Time Greatest Deception. And that was in 2019, just before I joined the university. So I printed this book, but I never read it. I still wanted to justify why I believe what the church teaches. And even though I was told that this doctrine just came in the other day in 1980, I used to tell myself that if that is the case, then I believe there was a very good reason why the church decided to make the change. So I did not want to hear any other kind of explanations that will make me question what the church was teaching. So although I had these materials and these books, I was still prejudiced against that which was contrary to what the church was teaching. So I had never made any decision to have a candid investigation on what was really the discussions that were happening around. And this really troubled my mind, because I was perplexed. I used to see what the pioneers were writing about the Trinity doctrine and what the church is saying today about it. And I was confused, but I never wanted to study, because when I could go to church, I will be told that, no, don't study about this, because the more you study, the more you'll get confused. So I decided to involve myself with church activities and do everything, sing in the choir, do everything that will make me forget about the crisis. Now this crisis was happening in my mind. So I wanted to distract myself and not to study about this. So that is what happened. So when I joined uh, the university for the first time in 2019, that was in September, I joined the Adventist church in the university. So in a meeting with the church leaders, we were told of what had happened in that church for the past 2 years, that there were some people who had been bringing in some very strange teachings which do not align with what the church teaches. And because of that, some people had been disfellowshipped. So they were trying to put in new measures that will uh, that will that will make sure that other church members are not being misled. And among those measures they were taking was to discourage people not to have private Bible studies. So we were discouraged not to have private Bible studies in the absence of church elders. So I never understood why they told us that, because I believe that these Bible studies are an opportunity for us to preach the truth, if in any case there are some people who are teaching error. So me and my friends, we still continue to have private Bible studies until COVID-19 in 2020. So then also in the same year, 2019, I joined the Master Guide class, which is a program that is meant for training people to be teachers of young children. Now, the reason why I joined Master Guide class is because I had taken a keen interest in our denominational history. I wanted to know what was happening in our denominational history. But when I joined this class, I did not find it helpful in my studies, because they could teach of church history and the developments that are happening in the 18th century. But in the 20th century, they were not really keen on the doctrinal developments happening in the 20th century. They could just speak of the administrative developments in the 20th century. So it could not answer most of the questions that I had, especially since hearing about the Trinity doctrine and how it came into Adventism. In fact, when I was discussing with my friend, I used to tell him that I'm going to show you that there is a doctrine of the Trinity in the Bible. Then he told me that if that is the case, it should not be the one that was brought into Adventism by Leroy Froome. Now, I never understood, I had never heard of such a name, Leroy Froome, before. So I was wondering, I've been in this class for quite a while, never heard of this name and what he did, and never even heard of how this doctrine came into Adventism. So it's something that is happening in Adventism, that the leadership has been economical in bringing to light our denominational history. And also, on the other hand, many Adventists have not been diligent enough to know what was happening in the past. And so I decided to study by myself. So I did not have to rely so much on these master guide classes to know about church history, especially in the 20th century. So I really hope that one day I will find answers to the questions I started having about the Trinity doctrine. But most of the responses I used to get is that, no, don't study this, you'll be confused. Or the more you study this, one day you'll become an offshoot or an anti-Trinitarian. And or they could tell me that, these offshoots or anti-Trinitarian are very difficult people, are very arrogant, they like debating and all that. And I realized that these were just scaremongering tactics to dissuade someone from getting into these studies and wanting to know more about the truth about who God is. So there is something that happened in the church at the university that after it happened, I decided that now from this point, I'm going to study the Bible for myself. I'm going to do an individual investigation. So they invited an elder to speak about, they invited him to speak about two things, the 2520 and the anti-Trinitarianism in Adventism. So I thought this is going to be the best chance for me to get good arguments for me to present to my non-Trinitarian friend. So I took my notebook and pen and Bible and I attended that study. But I was disappointed because the elder never really dealt with what is wrong with the non-Trinitarians or even the 2520. The whole of the time he was just bashing them out and calling them out, saying all those manner of things, and nothing to convince me to go and convince my other non-Trinitarian friends. So I reasoned within myself, if what I heard today did not even convince me, how will it convince my friend who doesn't believe in the Trinity doctrine? So I decided to read again the Fundamental Beliefs Manual and could still not find any answer. Of course, they put in verses there and also some theologian commentaries, but I was still not convinced that this is not solid enough for me to convince myself. How will it even convince my friend who doesn't believe in the Trinity doctrine? So, but shortly after, schools were closed and we went home because of COVID-19. So when we were at home, I wanted to follow up on these discussions online. And I now had all the time to study about this by myself. But I had forgot my my printed book by Richard Vaughan at school. So the time I got an opportunity to go and pick the book from where I used to live, I left home and went, and the only thing I could think of is that book. So when I took the book and came home with it, I started reading it. It's 289 pages. So I said, there is no way someone will say things that doesn't make sense in a over 200-page book. So this is what I decided to do. I said that I'm going to study both sides of the debate. That will be the pioneer understanding and the current church position on it. Then from there, I'll make a decision on what really is true and what is not true. So as I was studying, the truth that there is one true God who is the Father of Christ was so emphatic, and it was so plain to me that I never knew that there is a way in which people can object to that and teach the contrary. And also, I had always believed that Jesus Christ is the one who was sent in John 3:16. So when that was made more emphatic in my studies about what the pioneers believed about Christ, there was no way for me to say that Christ is not really the begotten Son of God. In fact, that is a time that I realized that it is not taught in Adventism that Christ is the only begotten Son of God. I also came to see it in a very new sense of how Christ dwells in us, that he is a comforter, according to John, and that Paul's prayer is that Christ will live in us by faith. And he also says that Christ in you, the hope of glory. And that was an amazing realization to me. So having all of these studies and coming to know the truth about who God is, I knew that I was going to make a very crucial decision, because on one side, the church that I had belonged to taught the Trinity doctrine, which I could not find any evidence to support it. And on the other hand, there is the truth about who God is, which is not held by so many people. And so I had to make a decision. Will I continue to maintain the good associations I had with my friends in the mainstream church, or will I accept the truth and lose my friends and perhaps even my membership and my reputation? But I had to make a choice. So I continued in my studies and started asking a lot of questions, making inquiries, just to make sure that the decision that I was going to make is going to be a genuine decision. And I was praying so much about it. So I made inquiries at home, inquiries at the church, local church, but the reaction that I got is that most people will develop I care less or it doesn't matter attitude. Some will say that it is not salvational. Some will express an narrow-minded and bigoted attitude towards those who differ with them on beliefs. And it's still happening to the present day. So I decided to believe what is true, that there is one true God, and he has an only begotten Son. And so one day, it's something that, so we used to have Sabbaths at home because we couldn't go to church because of the COVID restrictions. So one day while we were at home having our Sabbath studies, my father came with the fundamental beliefs manual, the current one. And he said that because there has been a lot of questions with regards to the beliefs of the church, it is necessary for us to go over these 28 fundamental beliefs. So when he started off the first belief, he went on to the second, and that is when I asked that, will I be wrong if I uphold the former, the historic fundamental principles, and not the current fundamental principles? Now, to his surprise, he never had any idea of any fundamental principles. So I shared with him the fundamental principles copy that I had in my phone. And from that day to date, he has never finished taking us through the 28 fundamental beliefs. So he stopped at the second fundamental beliefs. So that meant that now everyone is going to study this for themselves. And he also knew about the fundamental principles, something that he never knew about it before. So this really, the decision that I made meant that I was going to be branded as an offshoot, a heretic, or a troubler. And so I knew the consequences, because even today, those who believe in the truth about who God is, it is a stigma, it's a shame, it's a disgrace. And I will even find people who they don't believe in the Trinity, but they will call themselves Trinitarians because they do not want to suffer from the shame and disgrace that come along with it. So I made a decision that I'm going to speak the truth, I'm going to believe the truth, and I'm going to teach the truth. So when schools resumed after COVID, that will be around after 8 or 7 months after schools had closed, I was sharing messages online, finding different videos to share online, different studies, or even my own notes. And there is a video which I shared online in groups, church groups, the church in the university. And after I shared this video, the elders really made a very immediate decision to remove me from all of these groups. And this really disassociated me from the church at the university, the Adventist church at the university. There was a video where Pastor Daniel was talking about the sanctuary. It's actually a short video, 5-minute video. It's called The Sanctuary Snippet. And so I shared these videos in every group I was in. So they admitted that they don't have any problem with what was being said in the video. When I asked more, it was clear to me that they only had a problem with the person who was speaking in the video. So I asked, why do you have a problem with the person speaking in the video? They never want to give me a clear answer, but someone say that the person who is speaking in the video says that worshiping Christ is idolatry. Now, that is what I've always been told every time I bring up these discussions in Adventist circles. They will say that there are people like Nederman Sue, Pastor Daniel Mesa, and also at that time it was Pioneer Health and Missions. They could speak of such and say, these people are just offshoots and they want to create confusion. Now, I was not so quick to respond to that. I only say that you are in a great danger of presenting something that you've not really understood. Maybe you heard it from somewhere else, but I don't think that is what he meant. So they called me and told me that if you continue listening to these videos and sending out these studies, you are in danger of being called an offshoot. And so that is how it has been to date, because I've continued sharing my studies and what I know about who God is. And actually, I know that I've been called an offshoot, a heretic, because of what I believe about who God is. So by that, I was not able to go to the church at the university as regularly as I used to, because there is no way they could allow me to teach again in church, to discuss freely what I used to believe, because they told me that I'm causing confusion among the students who used to attend the church at the university. So my association with the members at the church, we never used to see oftenly. And I know that even in the nomination of people who work in the church, those who are friends with the non-Trinitarians were not allowed to to be given positions in the church because of their association, not even because that they are non-Trinitarians, but because of their association. They were never allowed to work in the church, either as deacons, elders, and all those kind of work. So that is what happened to me at the university. So coming back to the local church, it is not something that I was really made to be free to talk about it in church. Probably because my parents wanted to protect their reputation that their child is not an apostate, a heretic. But I was just praying for an opportunity to bring this to the attention of my local church members that, hey, you have to consider this. I wanted to ask questions and to have discussions with people at the church, but I was never allowed to do so because my parents wanted to protect their reputation. So I was not so much vocal about this at the local church, but one day I decided to write a letter to the church board because in the church manual they say members can be able to request for withdrawal of their membership by writing letters to the church board, where it will be considered by the church board and a decision will be made. So I approached the church clerk and asked her if I can request for withdrawal of membership. And she told me that I will have to write a letter and present it to the church board. So I had the letter ready with me and I told her, yeah, I have the letter. You can have it today, then take it to the church board. Consideration. Now, on that very same day, the church pastor said he wanted to have a discussion with me. And I asked the reason for the discussion, and he told me that he's going to show me from the Bible that there is the doctrine or the teaching of the Trinity. So I said, okay, then we can have a study. So, but when we went for the study, he never read the Bible. The only time we read the Bible with him was when I was reading some verses in the discussion. The only material he read is the book Evangelism from page 613 to 617. Now, the quotes have been put together that seem to support the doctrine of the Trinity. Actually, it was not really a discussion. It was like an interrogation, reading the first quote and asking me, do you agree with this quote? Yes or no? So actually, the discussion was not fruitful, so we organized for another discussion at another time. So I was keenly waiting on the next time we are going to meet with him, hopefully waiting for him to study the Bible with me. Now, in our next meeting, it was on a Sabbath afternoon, and we never had a long discussion. It was a short discussion, but he still read the quotes from the book Evangelism. So I asked him to be checking those quotes in their original context from where they were retrieved from and put in the book Evangelism. So I realized that the more we did that, the more he became clueless about what he really wanted me to agree with. And so actually, whenever we were reading one quote and going to its original context, whatever I was saying was being made plain. And after our discussion, there were two young boys who might have overheard our conversation with the pastor, and they never went to the pastor for any questions. They approached me to ask me questions. So that is when I had an opportunity to share with them about the truth about who God is and what has been happening in Adventism, and every questions that they had. We had a very fruitful discussion with them for 2.5 hours. And so we promised to have more studies with them. So it was interesting that they never went to the pastor for more inquiries. They came to me. I've never understood that to date, but I believe that God will continue leading them to the truth. Now, the third time we met with the pastor study was during a camp meeting at the local church, and there was one elder and some pastors were also present. So we went to study in with them. But even before the pastor came in for the study, we had been discussing with a certain elder about Christ and about the divinity of Christ. And the more we were studying with him, I believe that if we will we will have continued studying with the elder, he would have come to a knowledge of or understood what I was telling him about Christ. But when the pastor came in, they started interrogating me about, do you believe this quotation from evangelism? Do you believe this, yes or no? And so the direction the discussion took, it was not fruitful. So it was decided that I am going to be disfellowshipped from the church. And so we parted ways that evening, and I went home. So when I went back to school, actually when I'm in school, I usually look for any opportunities to reach out to my schoolmates and have Bible studies with them. But in October last year, 2023, I got a call one Sabbath afternoon that a motion to disfellowship me has been passed. And I don't know, but I really felt a great relief, and that I was now able to be very much vocal about my convictions about who God is. I will not be debarred from speaking out because of my membership in mainstream Adventism. So one thing that is very interesting to me is that I was baptized in October 2014, and I was disfellowshipped in October 2023. I don't know how that happened, but it's very interesting to me that they all happened in the same month. So since I came to an understanding of who God is, it has always been my burden that I feel that I should be sharing with people about this and having candid discussions with them. And I believe that if we do our part in personal investigation, God will do his part in revealing the truth. Now, as I'm about to finish, I just want to read some few verses, and that will be the first verse will be in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 19 to 21. And it reads, "Quench not the spirit, despise not prophesying, prove all things, hold fast that which is good." And this verse is very much relatable to my experience in coming to understand the truth about who God is. We are told in Proverbs 23 verse 23 that buy the truth and sell it not, also instruction and wisdom and understanding. There is a very good counsel we get from Sister White in Testimonies for the Church, volume 3, page 258, paragraph 2, that the word of the Lord spoken through his servants is received by many with questionings and fears, and many will defer their obedience to the warning and reproofs given, waiting till every shadow of uncertainty is removed from their minds. The unbelief that demands perfect knowledge will never yield to the evidence that God is pleased to give. He, God, requires of his people faith that rests upon the weight of evidence, not upon perfect knowledge. Those followers of Christ who accept the light that God sends them must obey the voice of God speaking to them when there are many other voices crying out against it. It requires discernment to distinguish the voice of God. Those who will not act when the Lord calls upon them, but who wait for more certain evidence and more favorable opportunities, will walk in darkness, for the light will be withdrawn. The evidence given one day, if rejected, may never be repeated. And I believe that this is a very serious warning, that wherever the truth leads, it is a responsibility to follow. And the last verse I'm going to read is from 1 John chapter 1, verses 5 to 7. That this then is a message we have heard of him, and declare unto you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanseth us from all sin. So I believe that throughout my experience, I've always wanted to follow wherever the truth leads. That I'm to accept the truth for what it is, and for what it is wherever I find it. And I believe that I found the truth and will continue studying more because I want God to reveal his will to me.